The soft clinking of glasses and hushed voices filled the small Purple Leaf wine shop in the historic district of Tucson. Nima Caldwell smoothed a loose strand of her locks and smiled at an older couple examining a bottle of Argentine Malbec. "That's one of my personal favorites," she said, moving closer. "The vineyards sit at over 6,000 feet in altitude, which gives the wine a real minerality and depth." The woman looked at Nima with interest. "Have you actually been there?" "Not yet, unfortunately," Nima replied, but she kept smiling. "The winemaker came to last year's festival, though, and we had a long talk. He showed us pictures. Next time, he's bringing videos of the entire property." This was Nima's traditional tasting event, held every last Friday of the month. There weren't many visitors, around 15 people, but it was exactly the intimate, cozy atmosphere she aimed to create. Small tables with cheese boards and homemade bread were set up between the racks of carefully curated bottles. Nima scanned the room. 6 years ago, when she first opened the store, the space was cramped and awkward, an old warehouse with towering ceilings and cracked brick walls. She had personally selected the wooden paneling and the track lighting that now softly illuminated the exposed brick. The shop had become her creation, her sanctuary, and her greatest source of pride. "Nima, this is excellent," said Caleb, a silver-haired professor from the University of Arizona and one of her regular patrons. "These Washington wines get more interesting every year." "Thank you," she nodded. "I've been able to track down some small vineyards that haven't hit the big box stores yet." Purple Leaf wasn't a massive retailer, but it had a loyal clientele who appreciated Nima's auteurist approach to selection and her meticulous attention to detail. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed her smartphone on the counter light up. A new text message had arrived. Nima knew her husband wouldn't be showing up tonight, just as he hadn't come to any of her events for the past 3 months. The message was brief. "Don't wait up. I'm with a potential collector." She switched off the phone screen. 6 years ago, when they first met, she couldn't have imagined their relationship would devolve into this strange form of coexistence. Her thoughts drifted back to their first meeting at a contemporary art exhibit. Mehi Queenland was standing in front of his installation, a bizarre construction of metal, glass, and light that he claimed symbolized the fragility of human relationships in the digital age. Nima was just accompanying a friend and had only a distant concept of contemporary art, but she found herself intrigued, less by the work itself than by its creator. "You've been frozen in front of my installation for 15 minutes, he said, suddenly appearing beside her. "You either love it or you don't understand it at all." There was no arrogance in his voice, only genuine curiosity and a slight self-directed irony. He was 5 years older than her and spoke with passionate intensity and a sparkle in his eyes. His hands were incredible, with long fingers that constantly gesticulated as he explained his artistic philosophy. When Nima confessed that she didn't know much about contemporary art, he laughed. "Honesty is a rare commodity at events like this," he said. "Everyone here pretends to understand the deep meaning, when in reality they're only calculating the price of the piece and the artist's status." A week after they met, he invited her to his studio, a spacious loft with huge windows and high ceilings. Canvases, wire sculptures, and charcoal sketches covered the walls. Everything spoke of a simmering creative energy. "I want to create something real," he told her, showing his work, "something that makes people think, feel, and question." Mehi never talked in cliches. He always found an unexpected angle for any subject. He drew her into his world, where the mundane dissolved, and beauty could be found in the most unexpected places. "I don't paint pretty landscapes for hotel rooms," he explained. "The market demands comfortable, decorative painting, but that's not art. Art should be unsettling." Nima believed in his talent and sincerity. She didn't know that it wouldn't be long before there was no trace left of that passionate artist with the fiery eyes. She didn't know that 3 years after they married, Mehi would be lying on the sofa, endlessly scrolling through social media, complaining about the soullessness of the art market and the banality of the critics. The tasting evening was winding down. Nima said goodbye to the last few visitors and began tidying up. It was nearly 11 o'clock when she got home. Makey was gone, but signs of his presence were everywhere. An unfinished cup of coffee on the side table, art magazines scattered around, an uneaten sandwich in the kitchen. Nima sank tiredly onto the sofa. Their house, a small but cozy bungalow in the Sam Hughes district, had once been their joint project. Now, it increasingly felt like Makey's territory. Traces of him were everywhere, but he himself was rarely present. She remembered 2 years ago when Makey had been excited about working on a new series, talking about an exhibition in Santa Fe. But the exhibition never happened. The gallerist who had promised to support him suddenly lost interest, and Makey fell into a state of creative paralysis from which he never emerged. At first, Nima sympathized, supported him, and suggested ideas. But as time passed, her patience wore thin, especially when she realized Makey had stopped even trying. He spoke of accumulating energy and re-evaluating his creative path. But in reality, he spent most of his time on social media, criticizing successful colleagues and complaining about his lack of recognition. The front door slammed at midnight. Makey walked in, smelling of whiskey and cigarettes. "How is the meeting with the collector?" Nima asked, trying to keep her voice neutral. "He didn't show," Makey replied, tossing his jacket over the back of a chair. "Sent a text at the last minute, some urgent thing, supposedly." "I'm sorry," Nima said, although she doubted the collector's existence. "I knew you'd be happy," he said curtly. "It suits you just fine for me to stay a loser." Nima sighed. These accusations had become routine. "Don't be ridiculous, Makey. I've always supported your work." "Right, you have," he smiled sarcastically. "You just keep reminding me that I don't earn anything." "I never said that." "Not directly, but you constantly stress how hard it is to run the shop, how much time you spend on it." "Because it's true. I work hard, and I do it willingly." Makey opened the fridge and took out a beer bottle. "Of course, you're a successful businesswoman. I'm nothing. Stop the self-pity. It's not productive." "Not productive?" He gave a strained laugh. "You even sound like a businessman. You measure everything by its usefulness." Nima felt her irritation rising. "How am I supposed to talk? Am I supposed to validate your whining? Makey, you haven't painted a single canvas in the last year. You don't even try." "Oh yeah?" he challenged her, meeting her gaze. "Do you know what it means to be an artist? Creativity doesn't run on a schedule. It's not your store where everything can be planned and organized." "But creativity requires at least a minimum of effort," Nima countered. "You just gave up." "Easy for you to say. Your father financially backed you when you opened your shop." That was a sensitive point. Nima's father had indeed given her the down payment for the space, but she had done the rest by taking out a loan and working 16-hour days for the first 2 years. "I paid my father back every last cent," she said, her voice trembling with resentment. "And you know it. And your studio rent, by the way. I've paid that out of pocket for the last 3 years, too." "There it is." Makey raised his finger triumphantly. "You finally said it. Out of my pocket. It's all about money." "No, it's not the money. It's your attitude," Nima retorted. "I wouldn't mind providing financial help if I saw you at least trying to create something. But you sit at home, criticizing everyone around you and waiting for success to fall from the sky." Makey's face contorted. "You don't understand. The art world is a racket. If you don't have connections, if you don't kiss up to the right people, you don't stand a chance." "But there are other artists who—" "Like who?" he interrupted. "The ones who churn out commercial junk for tourists? Or the ones working for ad agencies, selling their souls for corporate dollars?" "There are other avenues," Nima insisted. "You could teach, give workshops." "Oh, now you're an art expert." His voice dripped venom. "Maybe you could teach me how to paint, too. Or would you prefer to tell me to get a job at a grocery store?" Nima closed her eyes and exhaled slowly. These fights repeated with depressing regularity. Makey skillfully turned every conversation into an accusation against her, manipulating her guilt. "I don't want to fight," she finally said. "It's just that we can't go on like this." "We?" he sneered. "Aren't you the one who can't accept that her husband doesn't live up to her expectations? You want to be proud of me in front of your rich clients. Oh, my husband is a famous artist. And you don't actually care about the art. You don't even understand what I do." "That's not fair," Nima said softly. "I've always supported your art. Remember 3 years ago when I organized an exhibition of your work at the store?" "Yeah, you organized a charity event." He grimaced. "Let's support the poor artist." "Thank you so much." "You are impossible," Nima shook her head. "No matter what I do, you twist everything. I don't know how to talk to you anymore." Makey finished his beer and set the bottle on the table. "Maybe we don't need to talk. Maybe it would be easier for you to find someone more successful, a financial analyst or a lawyer, something to brag about." "Stop it," Nima said tiredly. "I won't participate in this anymore." She stood up and walked toward the bedroom. "Go ahead, run away," Makey yelled after her. "That's what you always do. Avoid conflict instead of solving problems." Nima closed the bedroom door behind her and leaned against it. These fights were draining all her strength. She couldn't remember the last time she had felt happy with her husband, when exactly their passion had turned to bitterness and his creative fervor to self-pity. She walked over to the window and pulled back the curtain. The Tucson night sky was peppered with stars. Somewhere in this city, there were probably happy couples who still loved, supported, and inspired each other. Nima remembered how she and Makey had once sat on the porch of their newly purchased home, dreaming of the future. He spoke of his art gallery, she of expanding her shop. They planned trips. They talked about the wines she would bring back from France and Italy, and the landscapes that would inspire his new works. Where had it all gone? How could an all-consuming passion turn into an endless stream of blame and disappointment? Nima couldn't sleep for a long time that night. She listened to the sounds from the living room, where Makey seemed to be watching television. She didn't need to see him to know what he was doing, lying on the sofa with a beer bottle, gloating over the news from the art world, ridiculing the successes of other artists, and finding confirmation of his conspiracy theory against true talent. "I can't live like this anymore," Nima thought, staring at the ceiling. It wasn't the first time she'd had the thought, but today it felt especially clear and final. Makey had become a selfish child demanding constant attention and support while giving nothing back. He was a parasite on her patience, her kindness, and her finances, and there was no end in sight. The Arizona sun beat down relentlessly, forcing people dressed in dark suits to seek shade under the sprawling trees of Evergreen Cemetery. Nima stood by the fresh grave, tightly gripping a bouquet of white lilies, her father's favorite flowers. Montgomery Monty Caldwell had always said there was something aristocratic and unchangeable about their austere beauty, just like the principles that guided his entire life. The minister was saying something about eternal rest and the Lord's mercy, but the words reached Nima as if through a column of water. Her thoughts drifted between memories of her father and the realization of an irreparable loss. Monty had died suddenly of a massive heart attack during a business meeting. He died in his own way, dressed in a suit, talking about investments, without even having time to say goodbye. It was so characteristic of him, formal, reserved, always focused. Nima felt a light touch on her elbow and turned around. Makey stood beside her with an expression of grief suitable for the occasion, but his eyes remained cold, distant. He was wearing a dark suit Nima hadn't seen in years, not since they attended a major exhibition opening in Phoenix. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. Nima nodded, not trusting her voice. It was hard to tell how sincere her husband's concern was. The relationship between Makey and Monty had always been tense. Nima's father, pragmatic to the core, had never hidden his skepticism about his son-in-law's artistic ambitions. "Art is a fine hobby," he had once said, "but a man should provide something more reliable for his family." These words wounded Makey, hurting his ego, and he responded with a chilly courtesy that hid thinly veiled contempt. "Typical materialist," he would complain to Nima after every encounter with her father. To him, only what can be measured in US dollars has value. The ceremony ended, and people began to disperse. Many approached Nima, offering condolences and hugs. Meki stayed nearby, but gradually moved away, engaging in conversation with a group of men in elegant suits, Monty's business partners. Nima noticed this detail. Previously, Meki had avoided all communication with the suits, as he contemptuously called them. Now, he was actively participating in the conversation, even typing something on his phone. Nima. The quiet voice of Veronica, her father's executive assistant, pulled her out of her reverie. Do you need anything? A little water? Veronica, a woman in her mid-50s with attentive brown eyes, had worked with Monty Caldwell for the last 20 years. She knew more about her father's business than anyone. No, thank you, Nima smiled faintly. I'm okay. Eugene wanted to speak with you, Veronica said, nodding toward a gray-haired man nearby. It was about the will and other formalities. Eugene Brooks, her father's lawyer and a longtime family friend, caught Nima's eye and walked over to her. My deepest condolences, he said, shaking her hand. Monty was an extraordinary man. Thank you, Nima nodded. I valued his partnership greatly. We'll talk about everything later, Eugene said. Now is not the right time for business matters. But as soon as you're ready, contact me. There are some important things to discuss. Of course, Nima replied. I'll call you next week. After the cemetery, there was a memorial dinner at the country club where Monty had been a member for the last 30 years. Nima sat at the head table, mechanically responding to condolences and maintaining meaningless conversations. Meki moved among the groups of guests, unexpectedly animated and sociable. Watching her husband, Nima recalled her father's warnings. Monty had never explicitly disapproved of her choice, but his reticence toward Meki spoke volumes. He's using you, honey, her father had told her one day, a year after the wedding, when they were alone after a family dinner. I can see through people like that. Nima had been fiercely protective of her husband at the time. You don't understand creative people, Dad. Meki isn't like you and me. He thinks differently. He sees the world differently. It's not about his creative nature, her father said. I know many artists, musicians, and writers. Among them are exceptionally decent and responsible people. It's his character. He's self-centered. Nima, he always puts himself first. You're being unfair. Nima had felt offended at the time. You're just very different. Monty didn't press the issue, but periodically returned to this conversation, especially when he noticed signs of dissatisfaction in his daughter's demeanor. I respect your choice, he said. But remember, you deserve to be loved as much as you love. These words resonated in Nima's mind as she watched Meki, who was now having an animated conversation with Eugene Brooks. The discussion seemed lively. Nima observed her husband arguing something fervently, and her father's lawyer responding measuredly but firmly. After the formal part was over, when most of the guests had dispersed, Nima and Meki got into the car. She expected her husband to offer to drive, given her emotional state, but he settled silently into the passenger seat. What were you and Eugene talking about? Nima asked, pulling out of the parking lot. Just offering my condolences, Meki shrugged. He's an old family friend, isn't he? Nima gave him a disbelieving look. It didn't look like that. You were having an argument. Meki was silent for a moment, then sighed. Fine. I asked him about the will. Don't look at me like that. It's a natural question. Your father was a wealthy man, and you're his only daughter. You asked about my father's will on the day of his funeral? Nima felt a wave of indignation surge inside her. When else? Meki frowned. Don't make a tragedy out of it. It's a practical matter. We need to know where we stand. We? Nima interjected. Yes, we, Meki said with emphasis. I'm your husband, remember? What a wife inherits has everything to do with her husband. Nima tightened her grip on the steering wheel, trying to focus on the road. What exactly were you interested in? When will the announcement be made? What assets are included in the inheritance? What restrictions might there be? Meki listed. Standard questions. And what did Eugene say? He said everything would be made official at the appropriate time. Meki grimaced. Typical lawyer answer. Nothing concrete. They drove in silence for a few minutes. Then Makey spoke again, this time in a softer tone. Look, I know you're upset right now, but we have to think about the future. The inheritance could change our lives. We could pay off our loans, maybe buy a bigger house. I'd be able to focus on my art without worrying about money. His words struck Nima. Her father had been buried only hours ago, and her husband was already making plans for his inheritance. You're unbelievable, she told him. In what way? Makey genuinely looked perplexed. Because you're not even trying to hide how much you care about my father's money, Nima retorted, a man you always despised. I didn't despise him, Makey said. We just had different ways of looking at life, that's all. And yes, I've never hidden the fact that I need money to develop my art. What's wrong with that? All great artists needed patrons, but most of them created great works, Nima said. They didn't just lie on the couch with a beer, complaining about the injustice of the world. Makey's face contorted with anger. You never understood the creative process. You think it's like the wine business? Buy it, sell it, put it on a spreadsheet? Art requires suffering, searching, sometimes stagnation, and despair. But you wouldn't understand. Nima parked the car outside the house and turned off the engine. This isn't the time for this conversation, she said tiredly. My father died 3 days ago. I buried him today. I need time to recover. Of course. Makey nodded, suddenly thoughtful. I'm sorry. I'm just worried about our future. Inside the house, Nima changed into comfortable clothes and lay down, feeling incredibly exhausted. Makey came into the bedroom several times, asking if she needed anything, but his concern felt strained, insincere. Later that evening, sitting on the porch, Nima recalled the moments she had shared with her father. She remembered how he had taught her to ride a bike, helped her with homework, and how proud he had been of her success in school and then in college. Monty Caldwell was not an ideal father, too strict, sometimes distant, always prioritizing work. But he loved her in his own way. He cared about her. He wanted the best for her. You know, Nima said, looking at the sunset sky, Dad always wanted me to get an MBA. He thought I couldn't seriously grow my shop without one. And he was right. Makey nodded abruptly. Your business could have been much more successful. Maybe now, with the inheritance, you could expand it. Open a chain of shops or a wine bar. It's not about the money. Nima shook her head. I've never been one for scaling up. I like my small shop, the personal connection with every customer. That's a lack of ambition, Makey said. You're afraid to think big. Your father was right about that. Nima looked at her husband in surprise. Since when do you agree with my father's opinions? Makey shrugged. I can recognize a man's correctness on some issues, even if I don't share his values. Your father was a successful businessman. I acknowledge that. You called him a soulless capitalist who knew nothing of real values, Nima reminded him. You said he was obsessed with money and status. I was too categorical, Makey said, conciliatory. Looking back now, I see he was right about a lot of things, especially about the need for financial stability. This sudden shift in opinion seemed suspicious to Nima. Only a few weeks ago, Makey had flatly refused to attend a family dinner with her father, calling the gatherings a bore. Well, it's a shame you didn't say that when he was alive, she said. Yes, it is a shame. Makey nodded with unnatural reflection. We could have found common ground. Nima remained silent, realizing her husband's insincerity, his sudden interest in the business world, his respect for her father's memory. It all stemmed from the expectation of an inheritance. The next morning, Nima woke up to the sound of drawers opening. Makey was rummaging through her desk. What are you doing? She asked, sitting up in bed. Looking for Eugene's phone number, Makey answered without stopping his search. I want to schedule a meeting with him. What for? To discuss the details of the inheritance. Nima sat up fully awake. Makey, Eugene is my father's lawyer, not our family lawyer. He will communicate with me about inheritance matters, not you. "But I'm your husband," Makey objected with poorly concealed irritation. "We should handle these matters together." "No," Nima said firmly. "This is my relationship with my father and his lawyer. When the will is read, I will tell you everything." Makey straightened up, his face flushed with anger. "You don't trust me?" "It's not about trust," Nima retorted. "It's about respect. Respect for me and for my father's memory." "Oh, please," Makey scoffed. "Your father always treated me like a second-class person. He didn't think I was good enough for his precious daughter." "That's not true," Nima said, even though she knew there was some truth in his words. "He was just concerned about my well-being." "He thought I was worthless," Makey continued, growing agitated. "I was nothing to him, an artist. He always said the word with as much contempt as if it were a curse." "You're exaggerating," Nima said, getting out of bed. "Dad never—" "Don't defend him," Makey interrupted. "He was a snob who valued people only by the thickness of their wallet, and frankly, maybe it's better that he's dead. At least now his capital will be used for something worthwhile, instead of another pointless investment." Nima froze, stunned by the cruelty of his words. "What did you say?" Her voice was barely audible. Makey seemed to realize he had gone too far, but he didn't apologize. "I'm just saying, his money will be more useful to us than to him." Nima felt her insides turn cold. Suddenly, the man standing in front of her was a complete stranger. "Get out of my room," she said quietly but firmly. "Nima, you're overly sensitive right now." Makey tried to placate her. "I realize this is a difficult time." "Get out," she repeated louder. "Now." Makey raised his hands in a gesture of surrender and left the bedroom. Nima sank back onto the bed, her hands trembling. She had suspected for a long time that her marriage was falling apart, but only now did she realize the depth of the chasm separating them. My father was right, she thought. Monty had seen right through Makey. He saw his selfishness, his parasitic nature, his ability to manipulate and prey on others. In that moment, Nima made a decision. She would not tolerate this farce of a marriage any longer. She would not let Makey get his hands on her father's inheritance, money he had spent a lifetime earning. She would not let him destroy what she had built for herself, her business, her reputation, her life. She stood up, walked to the mirror, and looked at her reflection. Pale face, dark circles under her eyes, but a look of determination and clarity, just like her father's. Nima took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. It was time to end this relationship. It was time to start a new chapter of her life without Makey Queenland. The morning was unusually cool for Tucson. Nima woke up early and stared at the ceiling for a long time, thinking. She could hear Makey snoring through the wall. After their confrontation the night before, she had gone to sleep in the guest room, slamming the door and muttering something about her being dramatic and hysterical. Even a week ago, the idea of divorce had seemed terrifying, almost impossible. Now, however, she felt a strange calm, as if she had finally made a decision that was long overdue. Makey's words about her father had been the last straw that broke the camel's back of her illusions. She got up, showered, and dressed in simple jeans and a white blouse. Today, she had an important conversation ahead of her, and she wanted to feel confident and comfortable. In the kitchen, Nima brewed a strong black coffee, sat down at the table, and opened her laptop. She began researching the divorce process in Arizona, asset division, and her rights. The more she read, the more certain she became of her decision. Arizona was a community property state, but that only applied to assets acquired during the marriage. An inheritance was considered the separate property of a spouse, unless explicitly transferred into community property. Nima took a few notes and closed the laptop when she heard Makey's footsteps. He walked into the kitchen, yawning and stretching, as if the argument from the night before had never happened. "Morning," he said, heading for the coffee maker. "What's for breakfast?" "Nothing," Nima replied calmly. "I didn't cook." Makey raised his eyebrows in surprise but said nothing and set about making coffee. When the cup was ready, he sat down opposite Nima and took a sip. "Look, about last night," he began in a conciliatory tone. I overreacted. Of course, your father was a good man and I respected him. It's just that we sometimes clashed. Nima remained silent, observing her husband. How easily he changed his tone, how cunningly he tried to smooth over what couldn't be smoothed over. It was his usual tactic. First push her to the limit, then feign repentance to manipulate her guilt. I want a divorce, Mickey, she said calmly and clearly. His hand with the cup froze halfway to his mouth. What? I want a divorce, Nima repeated. Our marriage turned into a farce a long time ago. We're both miserable. Mickey slowly set the cup down on the table. You can't be serious, he said, attempting a smile. This is about yesterday, Nima. It was just an argument. All couples have disagreements. It's not about yesterday. She shook her head. Yesterday just opened my eyes to what I've felt for a long time. Our relationship is exhausted. Makey changed tactics, his face becoming serious and concerned. You're grieving your father's death. It's natural. Grief can make us make rash decisions. Let's not rush. I'm not rushing, Nima countered. I've been thinking about this for a long time. We're not compatible, Makey. You want one thing out of life, and I want another. And it's not just about money or career. It's about values, about life, about each other. Makey's face began to change. The mask of concern evaporated, giving way to irritation. And you tell me this now? When your father has just died, when you're about to inherit. His voice was getting louder. What a coincidence. What does the inheritance have to do with it? Nima frowned. This is about our relationship, which... Oh, don't play innocent, Makey interrupted. You have it all figured out. Get the money and get rid of me so you don't have to share it. Very clever. Nima shook her head. You're making everything revolve around money again, and that just proves I'm right. The material aspect is all you care about, isn't it? Makey gave a scornful smile. You're your father's daughter, just as calculating, just as cold. You measure everything in terms of profit. That's not true, and you know it, Nima said quietly. I've always supported you. I believed in your talent when no one else did. I paid for your studio, your materials, your exhibitions. I never asked for anything in return. And now you're using it against me, Makey exclaimed. Typical. You pretend to help selflessly, and then you charge me for it. Nima sighed, feeling her patience draining away. I'm not sending you a bill, Makey. I'm just stating a fact. Our marriage is not working. It hasn't worked for a long time. Fine. Makey stood up, pushing his chair back hard. If you want a divorce, you can have one, but don't think I'm walking away empty-handed. What do you mean? Nima asked, though she already knew the answer. Half of everything you own belongs to me, Makey said with grim certainty. The shop, the house, the cars, and yes, the inheritance too. The inheritance is not community property under the law, Nima said calmly. And you opened the shop before we married, but you grew it while you were married to me, Makey countered. Any lawyer will tell you that the increase in a business's value during the marriage is considered community property. Nima was surprised by his knowledge. It seemed Makey had been studying the issue for some time, preparing for a potential divorce. I'm not going to argue the law with you, she said. That's what the lawyers are for. Ah, you've already hired a lawyer. Makey laughed bitterly. Even better, planning everything behind my back. No, I haven't hired a lawyer yet, Nima said, but I intend to. You should too, I assume. You can bet on that, Makey nodded, and my lawyer will shake you down for every last dime. You'll regret starting this. Nima stood up, ending the conversation. The only thing I regret is not doing it sooner. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting. With who? Makey demanded. It doesn't matter, Nima replied, heading for the door. I'll be back tonight. I hope by then you'll have calmed down, and we can discuss this like adults. Makey followed her with a furious grimace on his face. Don't think you can just get rid of me like that. I know my rights. I'm going to make you pay for all those years when you looked down on me and thought I was a loser. I never thought you were a loser, Makey," Nima said quietly, putting on her jacket. "That's how you see yourself." "Don't you dare psychoanalyze me!" He grabbed her arm, squeezing it so hard that she cried out in pain. "You think you're so smart. You think you have it all planned out. I'll divorce you in such a way that you'll spend the rest of your life paying the consequences." Nima pulled her hand away and took a step back. "You're only making things worse. Let go of me." "You're not going anywhere until we finish this conversation," Makey said, blocking her path to the door. "I'm not letting you just walk away and take everything that rightfully belongs to me, too." "What exactly belongs to you, Makey?" Nima asked, feeling anger boil inside her. "The shop I built with my own hands? The money I earned while you lay on the couch complaining about the injustice of the world? Or the inheritance from a father who saw right through you?" Makey's face contorted with rage. "You've been using me all these years. You wanted to keep an artist around to look intellectual in front of your snobby clients? Oh, my husband is such a creative artist, and you never believed in me. You never supported me." "I spent thousands of dollars on your exhibitions, your studio, your materials," Nima retorted. "I introduced you to people who could help your career. I put up with your mood swings, your drunken episodes, your endless complaints. What more could I have done?" "Belief," Makey shouted. "True belief in my talent, not treating my art like some passing fancy that has to be tolerated." "I did believe," Nima said softly at first. "But you stopped believing in yourself, Makey. You gave up, and now you want to blame the whole world, including me." Makey suddenly laughed, a cold, unpleasant sound. "You know what? Maybe this is for the best. Divorce is a great idea. I'll get my share of your business, my share of the inheritance, and I can finally make art without your constant recriminations and condescending looks." "You won't get anything from the inheritance," Nima said firmly. "It's not community property." "We'll see," Mickey smirked. "I'll get a great lawyer, and believe me, they'll find a way to get to the inheritance too. After all, we've been married for 6 years. Legally, I'm entitled to half of everything." "Not half of the inheritance," Nima repeated. "Inheritance, money, business, what's the difference?" Makey waved his hand. "The only thing that matters is that you'll pay for what you did to me. You'll pay for me for the rest of your life." These words, spoken with such malice, finally made Nima see the situation with total clarity. The person standing in front of her was not the man she had once loved, but a greedy, petty egoist who would do anything for money. "I'm leaving," she said, pushing past Makey and opening the door. "And I advise you to calm down and think. If we separate peacefully, it will be better for both of us." "Peacefully?" Makey laughed after her. "Oh no, dear, it won't be peaceful. I'll take everything I can from you, I promise." Nima walked out of the house, pulled her car keys out with trembling hands, and got behind the wheel. She didn't start the engine immediately, trying to calm down and organize her thoughts. Makey's reaction was expected, but she was still shocked by his rage and greed. 10 minutes later, she parked in front of the office building that housed Eugene Brooks's law firm downtown. She hadn't planned this meeting in advance, but she instinctively drove there, knowing she needed advice from someone she could trust. Luckily, Eugene was in and agreed to see her without an appointment. When Nima walked into his office, the lawyer immediately noticed her state. "What's wrong?" he asked, gesturing to her chair. "You look distraught." "I told Mickey I want a divorce," Nima replied, sitting down. "He didn't take it well." Eugene nodded thoughtfully. "I can imagine." "Did he threaten you?" "Yes." Nima smiled weakly. "Mainly financial demands. He says he's entitled to half of everything, including the inheritance." "That's not true," Eugene said firmly. "An inheritance is considered the separate property of a spouse unless it was explicitly transferred into community property." "But I understand your concern. Divorce proceedings can be nasty." "He'll fight for every penny," Nima sighed. "I know him." Eugene took off his glasses and cleaned them with a handkerchief, a habit of his when thinking something over. "Well, perhaps now is a good time to tell you about an unusual clause in your father's will," he said. "I was finally going to discuss it with you at the official meeting, but circumstances have changed." Nima leaned forward. "What is it?" "You see," Eugene put his glasses back on, "your father was a cautious and very astute man. He never fully trusted Meiki and was worried he might try to access your inheritance in case of conflict. So, he took steps." "And what did he do?" Nima asked, feeling a mix of surprise and gratitude toward her father. "He created a special trust," Eugene explained. "All of his assets do not go directly to you, but into this trust, the Caldwell Family Trust. You are the sole beneficiary, but with a crucial condition. The trust assets are shielded from spousal claims in the event of a divorce. It's perfectly legal and quite common among wealthy individuals." Nima felt a huge weight lift off her shoulders. "So Meiki won't be able to claim the inheritance?" "Not only won't he be able to claim it," Eugene smiled, "he won't even be able to challenge it in court. Your father consulted the best family law attorneys. The structure is flawless." "And my business?" Nima asked. "I started the shop before we married, but its value increased during the marriage, and Meiki can claim a share of that increase," Eugene finished for her. "Yes, that's true, but your father also thought of that. In the last few months of his life, Monty secretly hired a private investigator to gather information on your husband, just in case, as he put it." Nima frowned. "A detective? Why?" "Your father suspected that Meiki might not be a faithful husband," Eugene said carefully, "and unfortunately, he was right." He opened a desk drawer and pulled out a folder. "Here are several photographs of Meiki with various women in compromising situations." "That's only part of it," Eugene said. "There's also evidence of financial fraud, trying to obtain loans with falsified documents, tax evasion. Nothing major, but enough to seriously sway the divorce process in your favor." Nima slowly went through the photos. She felt no pain or jealousy, only weariness and final confirmation that she was right. "I don't want to use this if I don't have to," she said finally. "I hope we can separate civilly." "Of course," Eugene nodded. "But if Meiki gets aggressive, we'll have leverage." "When is the official reading of the will?" Nima asked, handing the photos back to him. "I've scheduled it for next week," Eugene replied. "It'll just be you and me as the executor present. Meiki can attend as your spouse, but he doesn't have to." "He'll have to be present," Nima said firmly, "especially now that I've filed for divorce." "He's within his rights," Eugene agreed, "but again, it won't change anything legally. The trust is protected." Nima nodded, feeling strangely calm. Her father, even after his death, continued to look after her, protecting her from dangers she couldn't always see herself. "Thank you, Eugene," she said, standing up, "for everything and for seeing me without an appointment." "My door is always open for Monty Caldwell's daughter," the lawyer smiled. "And remember, no matter what Meiki threatens you with, he won't be able to touch the inheritance. Your father made sure of that." Leaving the office, Nima felt her resolve strengthen. A difficult period was ahead: divorce, separation of lives, perhaps a public scandal if Meiki decided to act as aggressively as he had promised. But now she knew she wasn't alone in this fight. Even in death, her father remained her protector. The office of the law firm Leonard, Simons and Associates was in a glass building in Tucson's financial district. Nima was sitting in a leather armchair, watching her lawyer, Martha Leonard, review the documents the messenger had just delivered. "It's interesting," Martha finally said, looking at Nima. "Your husband is clearly serious." "What is it?" Nima asked, trying to remain calm. "A preliminary list of demands from your husband's attorney." Martha pushed the papers away. "And I have to say, they're quite ambitious." Nima smiled wryly. It had only been a week since she informed Meiki of her decision to divorce, but he had already found a lawyer and prepared his demands. He was in a hurry. Meiki had moved out of the house the day after their talk, taking only his personal belongings and a few pieces of art from his studio. And on the third day, Nima received the news that her husband had hired Raymond Prescott, known in Tucson for his aggressive divorce tactics. He's demanding half the value of the house, half of your business, spousal support, and of course, a share of the inheritance, Martha enumerated. Plus compensation for emotional distress due to alleged psychological pressure from your side. Emotional distress? Nima shook her head. That's ridiculous. It's a standard Prescott tactic, Martha explained. He always starts with the most exaggerated demands to have something to concede later in negotiations. Don't take it personally. But Nima found it hard not to take it personally. Every new document, every demand, every accusation from McKee felt like a personal betrayal. How could the man she had lived with for 6 years turn into such a greedy and vengeful stranger? "What are we going to do?" she asked, looking at the imposing pile of documents. "To start with, we'll respond to his demands with our counteroffers," Martha said. "But don't worry too much. We're in a strong position, especially with the information Eugene Brooks provided us." Nima nodded. Eugene had already given Martha all the material gathered by the private investigator hired by her father. This evidence of Mackey's infidelity and financial machinations was a powerful ace up their sleeve, which they were holding back for now. "I don't want to use this material if I can avoid it," Nima said. "It would be humiliating for everyone." "I understand," Martha nodded. "But sometimes the mere threat of its use can be more effective than the evidence itself. Prescott is an experienced lawyer. He'll catch the hint and maybe advise his client to temper his appetite." Leaving the lawyer's office, Nima felt drained, as if she had run a marathon. Every such meeting sapped her strength. She got into her car and closed her eyes for a few minutes, trying to clear her thoughts. Her cell phone ringing pulled her out of her reverie. The name Rowena flashed on the screen. "Hello," Nima answered, and even those brief words sounded tired. "How was the meeting with the lawyer?" Rowena asked without preamble. "The usual, new demands, new accusations." "That bastard," Rowena cursed. "I'm sorry, but I can't call him anything else." "It's okay," Nima smiled faintly. "I sometimes call him that in my head too." "Listen," Rowena's voice became determined. "You need a distraction. Come over to my place. I'll make dinner tonight. We'll open a bottle of wine. I promise we won't talk about the divorce." Nima exhaled gratefully. "That sounds wonderful. Thanks, Ro." Rowena Xavier had been her best friend since college. They had studied business together. They dreamed of starting their own businesses. Nima, a wine shop. Rowena, an antique store. Both dreams had come true, albeit with varying degrees of success. Purple Leaf was thriving, while Rowena's antiques shop was more of a hobby than a real business. But that never became a source of envy or rivalry. Their friendship transcended that. In the afternoon, Nima parked in front of Rowena's small bungalow in Sam Hughes, a few blocks from her own home. The front garden was, as always, a riot of color. Rowena was an avid gardener. "Finally," she said, opening the door. "I thought you wouldn't come." Rowena was the opposite of Nima, small, with red hair and freckles across her nose. She always radiated energy and optimism. Now, she wore a brightly colored dress that further emphasized her cheerful nature. "Sorry, I was late leaving the shop," Nima explained, embracing her friend. "It doesn't matter as long as you're here." Rowena led her into the living room, where the table was already set. "I made seafood pasta and opened a bottle of that Italian wine you brought back from your last trip." During dinner, they talked about everything except the divorce and Mackey. Rowena talked about her latest finds for the shop, a new exhibition at the art museum, and her vacation plans. Gradually, Nima felt the stress of the last few weeks receding. "You know what I've been thinking?" Rowena suddenly said, refilling their glasses. "You need to start a new chapter. And I'm not talking about the divorce now. I'm talking about something bigger." "What are you talking about?" Nima looked at her friend with interest. "Remember when we dreamed of starting a business together? A wine shop with an antiques department?" Nima smiled. "Of course I remember. We even thought of a name, Vines and Times. Exactly, Rowena nodded. Why don't we revisit that idea? Now would be a perfect time. You'll get your inheritance. I've saved some capital. We could find a bigger space, combine our collections. Nima considered it. The idea was tempting, especially now, when she desperately needed something new, fresh, and hopeful. It's an interesting idea, she finally said. But right now, with the divorce and everything— Exactly now, Rowena exclaimed. You need something that's entirely yours, something Makey can't even touch. A new business started after the divorce is finalized will be completely safe from his claims. Nima smiled at her friend's enthusiasm. You're right. Let's return to this conversation after the will reading and the first divorce hearing. If everything goes well, I'll seriously consider it. Deal. Rowena raised her glass. To new beginnings. They clinked glasses, and for the first time in a long time, Nima felt a ray of hope. Maybe something new and beautiful would be born out of this whole nightmare. The next day, Nima returned to her usual routine. She opened the shop, did inventory, and met with suppliers. The familiar activities calmed her and gave her a sense of normalcy amidst the chaos her personal life had become. Around noon, Martha Leonard called. I have news, the lawyer said without preamble. Prescott has requested a meeting, an unofficial preliminary one. What does he want to discuss? Nima asked, feeling her heart rate speed up. He's likely testing the waters for a potential settlement, Martha suggested. It's standard practice. We can reach an agreement, but only if you're willing. Nima thought for a moment. I think it's worth a try. If there's a chance to resolve things peacefully, don't count on it too much, Martha warned. Prescott is known for his dirty tricks. This might just be a tactical move. I realize that, but I want to try anyway. All right, Martha accepted. I'll arrange a meeting for next week. One more thing. Eugene Brooks called me this morning. The will reading is scheduled for next Wednesday. Have you been informed? Yes, Nima confirmed. Eugene called yesterday. Makey was notified too, Martha added, and judging by Prescott's reaction, he's very interested in the event. I'm sure he is, Nima replied dryly. After the call, Nima couldn't concentrate on her work. The thought of meeting with Makey and his lawyer was unsettling, and the impending will announcement only added to the tension. Despite Eugene's assurances about the reliability of the trust her father had created, she was still worried. Late that afternoon, her headache was so severe that Nima decided to close the shop early. She went home, showered, and lay down, hoping sleep would help her cope with the escalating stress. But sleep wouldn't come. Her mind spun with thoughts of the upcoming meetings, Makey's potential demands, and his reaction to the will. In the morning, she was awakened by a call from an unknown number. The voice on the receiver belonged to a young woman and sounded uncertain. This is Nima Caldwell, Nima answered, sitting up in bed. Who is this? My name is Layla Woods. You don't know me, but I think we should meet. About what? Nima became concerned. It's about your husband, Makey Queenland, the woman said after a pause. We've been seeing each other for the last few months. Nima felt her insides turn cold. She knew about Makey's infidelities from the detective's files, but it was one thing to see faceless photographs and quite another to talk to a real person. I'm not sure I want to discuss this, Nima finally said. Please, Layla's voice sounded desperate. It's important, not just for you, but for me. He's using people. You need to know, and I have information that can help you. After some thought, Nima agreed to meet Layla at a small coffee shop near downtown. When she arrived, the young woman was already waiting for her at a table in the corner. Layla looked like a fragile brunette, about 25 years old, with large brown eyes and nervous movements. Thank you for agreeing to meet, Layla said when Nima sat down opposite her. I know this is weird and really awkward. A lot, Nima nodded. So let's get straight to the point. What did you want to tell me? Layla took a deep breath. I met Makey at a contemporary art exhibition about 8 months ago. I work at a gallery, and he was charming. He talked about his art, his plans. She trailed off, clearly embarrassed. Anyway, we started seeing each other. He told me that you two were practically divorced, that you were living separately and were just doing the paperwork. Nima shook her head. 8 months ago, she and Makey were still living together, and divorce was out of the question. But that's not the point, Layla continued. In the last few weeks, he's become strange. After your father's death, he only talked about the inheritance, how he'd get his share, how he'd use the money for his career. And yesterday, Layla pulled her phone out of her bag. He sent me this yesterday. She showed Nima a text message from Makey. Everything is going according to plan. We'll have enough money for the gallery soon. Her father left a fortune, and half of it will be mine. Prescott knows what he's doing. Expect news after Wednesday. Nima silently handed the phone back. So, not only was Makey cheating on her, but he was actively planning for her money with his mistress. It was predictable. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked Layla. "I thought you were on his side." "I was," Layla nodded, "until I realized what he was really like. He used me just like he uses everyone. He promised to help my career, introduce me to the right people, but in reality, he only wanted me to introduce him to the powerful collectors at the gallery. And when I did, when he got what he wanted, his attitude changed. He became cold, distant, and then he started talking about the inheritance." She shook her head. "I don't want to be a part of that, and I think you have a right to know what he's planning." "Thank you for the information," Nima said after a pause. "It helps me understand the bigger picture." "You can use this message if you need to," Layla offered. "I'm willing to testify if necessary." Nima nodded, wondering how this unexpected meeting might affect her and Makey's divorce process. Obviously, he was not only refusing to budge on his financial demands, but was actively plotting to seize her inheritance. When Nima returned home, she immediately called Martha and told her about her meeting with Layla. "This is valuable information," the lawyer said, "especially if she's willing to testify. The text message and testimony about his plans could significantly influence the court's decision." "I don't want to drag her into this," Nima sighed. "Makey has done enough damage to her already." "It's up to you," Martha nodded. "But be careful. Prescott won't play fair. He'll likely pressure you into accepting unfavorable terms at the preliminary meeting. We need to be prepared." "I understand," Nima nodded. "I'll be prepared." The day of the informal meeting with Makey and his lawyer arrived too quickly. Nima put on a severe business suit and pulled her hair back into a tight bun, trying to look confident and professional. But inside, she cringed at the thought of seeing Makey again so soon. The meeting was set for a neutral location, a conference room in a downtown hotel. When Nima and Martha walked in, Makey and Raymond Prescott were already waiting. Makey looked unfamiliar. In a dark suit and neatly combed hair, he seemed more like a businessman than an artist. "Good morning," said Prescott, a tall, thin man with sharp features and a keen gaze. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting." They sat at the table, Makey opposite Nima. He looked at her with a strange expression, a mixture of anger, superiority, and something else she couldn't quite recognize. "So," Prescott began, spreading out the papers, "we are here to discuss the possibility of a pre-trial settlement. My client is ready to settle if his share is reasonable." Martha smiled slightly. "We are always open to reasonable offers. What are your terms?" Prescott began enumerating Makey's demands, the same ones from the preliminary list, but with slight concessions. He still insisted on half the value of the house and the business, but reduced the amount of spousal support and dropped the claim for emotional distress. However, the main point remained unchanged: a share of the inheritance. "We understand that the inheritance is separate property," Prescott said, "but given the length of the marriage and my client's contribution to the family relationship, we believe it's only fair that part of those funds be recognized as community property." Martha listened politely. then just as politely rejected most of the claims. My client's business was founded before the marriage and developed solely through her efforts. Mr. Queenland did not contribute to its development. As for the inheritance, the law clearly considers it separate property. We are ready to discuss the division of the house and personal assets acquired during the marriage, but nothing more. Makey's face contorted with anger. This is ridiculous. I've been by her side for 6 years, supporting her, helping her with the shop. Makey. Prescott stopped him gently. Let me negotiate. But Makey was unstoppable. She always does the same thing, pretends to be an innocent victim while manipulating everyone around her. She used me, and now she wants to throw me out like an old piece of junk. Mr. Queenland? Martha's voice remained calm but hardened. I advise you to control your emotions. It will not help us reach an agreement. Prescott placed a hand on Makey's shoulder, urging him to calm down, and continued the negotiations. But it was obvious that the parties were too far apart to reach a compromise. Perhaps we should take a break, Martha suggested after an hour of fruitless discussion, and return to this conversation after the will reading on Wednesday. Prescott nodded, clearly unhappy with the meeting's progress. I agree. Perhaps with new information, we can find a more constructive approach. As they were leaving the conference room, Makey caught up with Nima in the hallway. You think you've won, don't you? He hissed at her. You think your father had it all planned out, right? Please, Makey, Nima said tiredly. Let's not do this. You'll regret it, he interrupted. I know things about you that others don't, and believe me, I'll use anything to get what I deserve. Mr. Queenland, Martha interjected, if I were you, I wouldn't make threats in front of witnesses. It could be interpreted as attempted coercion and won't earn you points in court. Makey shot her a furious glance, but backed away and returned to his lawyer, who was waiting for him at the elevator. What did he mean by that? Nima asked Martha as they left. I know things about you that others don't. Most likely a bluff, Martha shrugged. Typical technique. Hint at some secret, try to smear you, make you nervous. Don't fall for it. But Makey's words sowed a seed of unease. What did he mean? She had no secrets that could affect the divorce process. Or did she? The day of the will reading was approaching, and Nima felt like she was facing a major exam. She didn't doubt the reliability of the trust her father had created, but Makey's words kept her on edge. The evening before the announcement, Rowena came over with a bottle of wine and a box of chocolates. I figured you could use some moral support. They sat on the porch, enjoying the warm evening and the good wine. How do you feel about tomorrow? Rowena asked. Nervous, Nima admitted. Not about the will itself, that's clear. But Makey said something strange at the meeting with the lawyers. He implied he knew something about me that others didn't. And you believed him? Rowena shook her head. Nima, that's obvious manipulation. He's trying to get you rattled, to make you doubt yourself. Don't give in to him. I know, Nima sighed. But it's still unsettling. It's like he's digging through my past, looking for something he can use against me. And what could he possibly find? Rowena looked at her friend intently. You haven't robbed the Museum of Diamonds and hidden the body in the basement, have you? Nima laughed, feeling the tension release a little. No, of course not. But you know Makey. He's capable of blowing up a scandal out of thin air. Well, Rowena raised her glass. Then here's to everything going smoothly tomorrow. To justice. To justice, Nima repeated, clinking her glass with her friends. She tried to project confidence and calm, but inside, she felt a sense of dread. Tomorrow could be a decisive day in her divorce proceedings. If everything went according to plan, if the trust truly protected the inheritance from Makey's claims, it would significantly weaken his position. But if he had actually found some loophole, some dirt... No, Nima told herself. I won't let him intimidate me. Whatever happens tomorrow, I'll handle it. Still, when she went to bed that night, she couldn't sleep for a long time, mentally rehearsing the possible scenarios for tomorrow and trying to prepare for any eventuality. The courtroom in the Tucson County Courthouse was austere and formal. Dark wood paneling, rows of benches, the judge's bench on a raised platform, everything created an atmosphere of solemnity and importance. Nema sat in the front row next to Martha Leonard. Across the aisle were Makey and Raymond Prescott, both in dark suits and with tense expressions. The will reading was scheduled for 10 o'clock, but Judge Harden, a stout man with a gray beard and piercing gaze, was late. Nema nervously rubbed the watch strap on her wrist, trying not to look in Makey's direction. She could feel his gaze on her, intense, evaluating, as if he were trying to anticipate her reaction to what was about to happen. Eugene Brooks, her father's lawyer, sat at another table, examining documents and occasionally adjusting his gold-rimmed glasses. He seemed calm and composed, like a man certain of his actions and their outcome. Finally, the doors opened and Judge Harden entered the room. Everyone present stood up. "Please be seated," the judge said, taking his place. "We are here for the reading of the last will and testament of Montgomery Richard Caldwell. Before we begin, I want to make one thing clear. This is not a divorce hearing for Mr. Queenland and Ms. Caldwell. This is a separate proceeding, and I expect everyone present to behave accordingly." He looked at Makey, who was fidgeting impatiently in his seat. "Mr. Brooks," the judge turned to Nema's father's attorney. "Are you prepared to present the will of the late Mr. Caldwell?" "Yes, Your Honor." Eugene stood up and approached the judge's bench with a folder of documents. "I have a certified copy of the will and all related documents, including the death certificate and proof of my authority as executor." The judge accepted the documents and began to review them. The silence in the room became almost palpable. Nema felt her heart pounding in her chest. Despite Eugene's assurances that her father's legal structure was sound, she was still nervous. "Very well," the judge finally said, setting the papers aside. "Mr. Brooks, please proceed with the reading." Eugene nodded, returned to his desk, put on his glasses, and opened the will folder. "I, Montgomery Richard Caldwell, being of sound mind and memory, do hereby make, publish, and declare this to be my last will and testament." He began to read. "First, I revoke all previous wills and codicils. Second, I appoint Eugene Albert Brooks as my executor and grant him full authority to dispose of my assets in accordance with the instructions contained herein." Nema listened to the standard legal wording without absorbing its meaning. Her thoughts were focused on the main point. What exactly had her father arranged to protect her inheritance? "All of my property, including real estate, securities, bank accounts, and other assets," Eugene continued, "I transfer to the Caldwell Family Trust, established by me on the 1st day of April, 2000, and supplemented on the 15th day of January of this year. I name my daughter, Nema Elizabeth Caldwell, as the sole beneficiary of this trust." McKee visibly tensed. Nema saw him lean toward his lawyer and whisper something in his ear. Prescott frowned and made a few notes in his notebook. "The terms of the trust," Eugene continued, "are detailed in a separate document that I am submitting to the court. The main provisions are as follows. All assets comprising the trust shall be administered by a trustee, whom I appoint Eugene Albert Brooks, for the benefit of the beneficiary. The beneficiary has the right to receive income from the trust assets and to use the principal for purposes specified in the trust agreement." Eugene turned the page and continued. "I would like to draw particular attention to Clause 7 of the trust agreement, which addresses the protection of assets from third-party claims. Under this clause, the trust assets are not subject to division in the event of the beneficiary's divorce and may not be subject to claims by the spouse or ex-spouse of the beneficiary. This clause is based on Arizona law, which recognizes the inheritance as the separate property of the spouse." Makey jumped out of his seat. "That's illegal! He can't just exclude me from the inheritance." "Mr. Queenland," the judge said sternly, "sit down and be silent, or I will be forced to remove you from the courtroom." Makey sat back down reluctantly, his face flushed with anger. Prescott placed a hand on his shoulder, urging him to restrain himself. "Continue, Mr. Brooks," the judge nodded. "Thank you, Your Honor." Eugene adjusted his glasses. In addition to the main trust agreement, Montgomery Caldwell left a sealed letter addressed to the court, which was only to be opened if Mecky Queenland challenged the terms of the trust. Since Mr. Queenland has already voiced his dissent, I request permission to submit this letter. Judge Hardin nodded. Submit the letter to the court. Eugene took an envelope from his briefcase and handed it to the judge. Hardin carefully examined the seals, ensuring they were intact. Then he opened the envelope and began reading the contents. As he read, his eyebrows rose higher and higher. "I see," he finally said. "Mr. Brooks, were you aware of the contents of this letter?" "Only in general terms, Your Honor. Montgomery Caldwell informed me that if his son-in-law challenged the terms of the trust, I should present the letter to the court. He said the letter contains evidence gathered by a private investigator that reveals Mr. Queenland's true motives and character." "That's blatant slander," Prescott protested, rising to his feet. "Your Honor, we object to the use of unverified accusations gathered by an unknown detective at the behest of a man with obvious prejudices against my client." The judge raised his hand for silence. "Mr. Prescott, I understand your concern. However, we are not considering your client's guilt or innocence in this case. We are reading a will, and this letter is part of it. Nevertheless," he looked at the documents again, "I believe the contents of this letter have a direct bearing on the divorce proceeding currently underway between Mr. Queenland and Ms. Caldwell. Therefore, I will forward a copy of the letter and the attached evidence to the family court for review in that case." Mecky paled. "What other evidence? What is he talking about?" "Mr. Queenland," the judge looked at him severely, "I will ask you for the last time to maintain order in the courtroom." Eugene continued the reading of the will, clearly reading aloud the details of the asset distribution and the terms of the trust. Nima noticed Mecky growing increasingly restless, constantly whispering to Prescott, who also looked anxious. Once the formal part was over, as the judge left, Mecky quickly approached Eugene. "What's in that letter? What's the evidence?" Eugene looked at him calmly. "I am not authorized to discuss this with you, Mr. Queenland. If you have any questions about the content of the letter, you should consult your attorney." "This is some kind of conspiracy," Mecky raised his voice. "You're all conspiring against me." Prescott quickly stepped forward and pulled his client away. "Mecky, calm down. Not here, not now." That same afternoon, Nima received a phone call from Eugene. "Nima, I need to talk to you in person, not over the phone. Can you come to my office tomorrow morning?" "Of course," she replied, feeling a growing unease. "What is it about?" "It's better to discuss it when we meet," he said. "It's nothing major. It's just that your father left another letter, addressed to you personally. I need to deliver it according to his instructions." The next morning, Nima arrived at Eugene's office. The lawyer looked serious, but composed. "Sit down," he said, gesturing to the chair opposite his desk. "After yesterday's will reading, I received notice from Judge Hardin. He reviewed the material your father provided and deemed it serious enough to pass it on to the family court." "What is it, Eugene?" Nima asked pointedly. "What kind of evidence did my father gather?" Eugene sighed. "Your father didn't just hire a detective to gather information on Mecky's infidelities. He conducted a full-scale investigation into his past." He took a folder from his desk drawer. "Here's a copy of the material that was submitted to the court. I think you should know who you were really involved with all these years." Nima opened the folder and began reading. With every page, her eyes widened in surprise and shock. According to the documents, Mecky Queenland was not who he claimed to be. His real name was Eric Walls, and he had a history of 2 failed marriages to wealthy women before moving to Tucson. His artistic career also turned out to be largely an invention. Many of the works he presented as his early pieces were copies of works by little-known artists. But the most shocking revelation was that 3 months before Monty's death, Mecky had attempted to secure a loan using falsified co-ownership documents for Nima's shop. The attempt failed when the bank requested more proof, but the fact was documented. Eugene also handed her a personal letter from her father. Nima read it with tears in her eyes. Monty wrote about the love he had for his daughter, how he wanted to protect her future, and his confidence that she would overcome this difficult period and build a new, happy life. After her meeting with Eugene, Nima received a call from Martha Leonard.
Nima, Prescott just called.
They want to meet this evening. It wasn't scheduled. I think they have a copy of the court file. What did he say? He said his client is ready to compromise and end the lawsuit quickly. I think they realized there was no point in continuing the fight. The meeting was set for 3 o'clock that afternoon. When Nima and Martha walked into the conference room, Makey was already sitting there with Prescott. He looked haggard and pale, a far cry from the self-assured man he had been only a day earlier. In light of the new circumstances, Prescott began, my client would like to reconsider his demands. Mr. Queenland is ready to waive all rights to Ms. Caldwell's business and her inheritance. He is also dropping any claim for spousal support. In return, he only asks for an equitable share from the sale of the shared house and the division of personal assets acquired during the marriage. Martha looked at Nima. That seems reasonable. We are willing to consider that offer, but we have one condition. Mr. Queenland must sign a non-disclosure agreement to keep all details of the marriage and divorce confidential. Agreed, Prescott quickly replied. We can prepare all the necessary documents within a week. Once the main points of the agreement were settled, Makey asked to speak with Nima alone. Are you satisfied? He asked quietly. After all, your father got what he wanted. Even dead, he managed to ruin my life. Don't try to manipulate me again, Nima retorted. You ruined your own life with lies and deceit. I loved you, he said, in my own way. No, Nima shook her head. You loved what I could give you. Financial stability, status, the ability to not have to work. That's not love. Makey lowered his eyes. They could sue me for forgery. Help me, Nima. Can you say you knew about it, that it was with your consent? No, she said firmly. I will not interfere. You created this situation. You'll have to face the consequences. Leaving the building, Nima took a deep breath of fresh air. For the first time in a long time, she felt not only relief, but true freedom. From the lies, from the manipulation, from the toxic relationship that had been sucking the life out of her. She decided to go to the cemetery where her father was buried. She wanted to be near him, to thank him for the care and protection he had provided her even after his death. It was a crisp, breezy October morning in Tucson. Nima opened the doors of her Purple Leaf shop 15 minutes earlier than usual. For the past month, she had been coming in early. She liked the way the sunlight began to filter through the large display windows, creating intricate patterns on the floor and walls. 3 months had passed since the divorce was finalized. The papers were signed, the assets divided, and the house sold. Nima bought a small but cozy house near downtown with a spacious front porch and a garden she was just beginning to cultivate. Life was gradually taking a new turn. The door chime rang, and Lillian Coates, one of her regular customers, a middle-aged woman with impeccable taste and a fondness for Italian wines, entered the shop. Good morning, Nima, she greeted her. You're in early today. Good morning, Lillian, Nima smiled. Yes, I decided to prepare for the delivery. A new shipment from Provence should be arriving today. Oh, wonderful! The woman was delighted. I was just about to update my rosé collection. They talked about the new arrivals, and Lillian placed her pre-order. Before leaving, she suddenly hesitated, as if wanting to say something, but not daring to. Anything else, Lillian? Nima asked quietly. Actually, yes. The woman lowered her gaze. I don't know if I should talk about it, but yesterday I was at an exhibition opening at the Morgan Gallery, and everyone was talking about your ex-husband. Nima tensed. Since the divorce, she had tried not to follow what was happening with Makey, though she occasionally heard rumors. What were they saying? She asked, trying to keep her voice neutral. Well, it's not very pleasant. Lillian looked embarrassed. It turns out that one of his pieces that was supposed to be exhibited was found to be plagiarized. Someone recognized a painting by a young artist from Santa Fe. There was a scandal. Makey was withdrawn from the exhibition, and now all the galleries are refusing to work with him. Nima nodded silently. She felt no gloating, only a weariness at the thought that Makey was still following the path of deception. I shouldn't have mentioned it, Lillian said guiltily. It's fine, Nima assured her. We've been divorced for a long time, and his life has nothing to do with mine anymore. When her customer left, Nima was thoughtful. It was strange to realize that she had once been so attached to this man, so convinced of his talent and sincerity, but now she looked at the news about him with distant curiosity, as if he were someone she barely knew. The day passed with the usual concerns, receiving deliveries, updating the catalog, consulting with customers. In the afternoon, as Nima was closing the shop, Rowena called, hurrying across the street with a brightly colored bag in her hands. I can't believe I caught you, her friend said breathlessly. You're usually late on Thursdays. I decided to come in early today, Nima smiled. I have a meeting with the designer about the expansion. Ah, yes. Rowena's eyes lit up. Are you really buying the space next door? Yes, I signed the contract last week, Nima nodded. The landlord finally agreed to sell. Now I'm going to merge the spaces and renovate them. What about our idea of doing business together? Rowena pouted jokingly. It's not forgotten, Nima replied seriously. It's just been modified. Remember we talked about a wine shop with an antiques department? What if we do a wine shop with an exhibition space? Your antique pieces, paintings by local artists, wine tastings? Rowena clapped enthusiastically. That's brilliant! A symbiosis of art and wine. When do we start? Let's discuss the details over the weekend, Nima suggested. Right now I have to run to a meeting. Sure, Rowena handed her a package. This is for you. I found it at an antique sale, an old French wine decanter. I thought it would be perfect for your collection. Nima hugged her friend, thanking her for the gift. As she headed to the meeting, she thought about how much her life had changed in the last few months. After the divorce settlement, it was as if she had found a second wind. New business ideas appeared. She regained interest in things she used to put off. The designer, a young woman named Clarissa, was already waiting for her at a coffee shop not far from the store. They spent almost 2 hours discussing the layout of the combined space, the color scheme, and the furniture. Nima was enthusiastic. This project was entirely hers. No compromises or concessions to others' ideas about how her business should be. As she was driving home, she incidentally saw a familiar figure across the street. Mackey was standing in front of the entrance to one of the galleries, clearly arguing with someone inside. Even from a distance, it was obvious that he looked disheveled. His once fashionable jacket was threadbare, and his hair fell messily over his face. Nima sped up. She didn't want to be seen, but Mackey, as if sensing her presence, turned around. Their eyes met across the street. For a second, his face froze in an expression that was a mixture of anger and shame. Then he abruptly turned away and walked off quickly. That fleeting contact left a strange feeling. Not regret, not anger, but rather a final confirmation that her decision had been correct. Mackey was still living in a world of illusions and deceit, while she was building a future based on truth. At home, Nima poured herself a glass of wine and went out onto the porch. The evening Tucson was bathed in the warm amber light of the setting sun. She contemplated the small garden she had started to build. She had planted some flowering shrubs, laid a flagstone path, and placed a bench under an old olive tree. This space, like her life, was slowly transforming, taking on new features. The next morning, she met with Eugene Brooks to discuss investing the trust fund in the business expansion. The lawyer approved her plans. Monty would be delighted, he said, reviewing the business plan. He always thought you had an entrepreneurial spirit. You just lacked confidence. I know, Nima nodded. I wish I had listened to him more often. He understood. Eugene smiled gently. That's why he created the trust, so you could use the money to grow the business. He believed in you, Nima. After the meeting with the lawyer, she went to the bank to apply for a renovation loan. With the trust fund as collateral, it was easy. The bank manager, examining her financial documents, commented, "Your business is doing very well, Ms. Caldwell. Sales have increased for the 3rd month in a row." "I've gone back to my maiden name," Nima corrected him. "And yes, the business is truly growing. I'm expanding my product range and my client base." "Congratulations," the manager said sincerely. Few small businesses show such positive dynamics in the current environment. Leaving the bank, Nima felt proud of her achievements. Purple Leaf truly was thriving. New customers were coming in through referrals. The average check size was increasing. Regular customers were excited about her experiments with rare wines. That same evening, while checking her mail, Nima found a letter from Layla Woods, the same woman who had once told her about her connection with Makey. The letter was brief. "Dear Nima, I want to thank you for your understanding and sensitivity during our meeting a few months ago. It was a difficult time for me, and your attitude helped me deal with my feelings of guilt and confusion. I'm leaving Tucson. I've received an offer to work at a gallery in Portland that I can't refuse. But before I leave, I wanted to let you know that Makey, or Eric, as his real name is no longer working in the art world here. After the scandal at the Morgan exhibition, all local galleries have refused to cooperate with him. The word is he plans to move to Las Vegas. I wish you all the best and prosperity for your beautiful shop. Sincerely, Layla Woods." Nima set the letter aside thoughtfully. She didn't gloat over Makey's downfall, but deep down, she felt justice had been served. He had spent so many years deceiving everyone around him, using people, manipulating them. And this was the result. The art world he longed to belong to had rejected him. A few days later, this information was confirmed by a customer, a collector who knew the Tucson art scene well. "Your ex-husband has left the city," he said, while selecting wine for a private reception. "After the plagiarism scandal, he had no choice. Nobody wanted anything to do with him." "I heard about that," Nima replied neutrally. "You know," the collector continued, "I never understood the hype around his work. It always seemed insincere to me, as if he was trying to imitate different styles without having a voice of his own." Nima remained silent. Oddly enough, she had once thought the same thing, though she had never voiced it aloud for fear of hurting Makey's feelings. She wondered how different their lives would have been if she had been more frank and he had been more open to criticism. The expansion work on the shop began in late November. Nima decided not to close the main premises during the renovation, although it caused some inconvenience to customers. To her surprise, many of them showed interest in the project. Some even offered help and advice. "You're creating not just a shop, but a cultural space," said Caleb, the same professor who had been one of her first regular customers. "It's exactly what our neighborhood was missing." December brought an unexpected surge in sales. The pre-holiday season had always been a success for Purple Leaf, but this year's numbers exceeded expectations. Nima hired an assistant, a university student named Sarah, to manage the customer flow. Young Sarah proved talented and diligent, quickly learning and showing a genuine interest in wines. "You're not at all what I thought you'd be," Sarah confided one evening as they were closing up after a busy day. "What do you mean?" Nima was surprised. "Well, my professor told me you recently went through a difficult divorce," she said sheepishly, "and I expected to see, a drained, depressed woman, and you're so energetic and determined." Nima smiled. "The divorce wasn't easy, but it was also the start of something new. Sometimes you have to lose something to find yourself." On New Year's Eve, Rowena hosted a small party at her house. The guests included only close friends, Eugene Brooks and his wife, Martha Leonard, several longtime Purple Leaf customers who had become friends, and, unexpectedly for Nima, Marcus DeVere, the architect who was working on the shop expansion project. The evening was filled with laughter, music, and interesting conversations. Near midnight, Nima went out onto the deck for a quiet moment. The stars glittered in the dark Tucson sky, and the air was crisp and clear. "Do you mind if I join you?" asked Marcus, who appeared in the doorway with 2 glasses of wine. "Not at all," Nima accepted gratefully. They stood side by side, enjoying the silence and the night view of the city. "You know," Marcus finally said, "I've been meaning to tell you that I admire you." Nima was surprised. "Why?" "For your courage and your vision," he answered. Not everyone dares to expand their business in the current economic situation, and not everyone has such a clear idea of what they want to create. Thank you, Nima said sincerely, but it's not just me. I have a great team, including you. They continued their conversation, discovering many common interests, from a love of travel to a passion for jazz music. Marcus proved to be an engaging conversationalist, attentive, knowledgeable, and with a subtle sense of humor. When midnight arrived and everyone went back inside for the traditional toast, Nima caught a look from Rowena, who was observing her and Marcus with a knowing smile. Don't jump to conclusions, Nima mentally addressed her friend, though she herself couldn't deny that the architect's company was pleasant. January brought new concerns and challenges. The renovation of the new space was delayed due to unexpected communication problems. A supplier in Italy held up a large wine shipment due to customs issues. Sarah came down with the flu and couldn't work for a week. But all these difficulties only strengthened Nima's resolve to move forward. Mid-month, she happened to find an article in the local paper. A small piece about the Las Vegas art scene mentioned Mekhi Queenland, who was trying to start a new career by offering his services as a designer for casinos and restaurants. Nima shook her head. It seemed Mekhi had never learned his lesson, once again trying to take the easy way out instead of developing his own talent. In February, the work was finally finished, and Nima could begin furnishing the new space. The wine bar took center stage, with cozy tasting areas and a small stage for musical evenings. The walls were ready for their first exhibitions. Rowena had already selected some antique pieces from her collection, and local artists were enthusiastic about the idea of displaying their works. The grand opening of the newly renovated Purple Leaf was scheduled for March 1st, exactly 1 year after Nima decided to divorce Mekhi. The coincidence felt symbolic. A full circle, the end of one chapter and the beginning of a new one. The opening night exceeded all expectations. The venue was packed with people, regular customers, friends, members of the local business community, and journalists. Nima, dressed in an elegant burgundy suit, accepted congratulations, gave mini tours of the new space, and talked about her vision for a place where wine, art, and community create a special atmosphere. "This is incredible," Marcus said, approaching her with a glass of champagne. "It's even better than I imagined when I was working on the design." "It's everyone's credit," Nima smiled. "Without your vision for the space, none of this would have been possible." "I propose a toast," he raised his glass, "to new beginnings and bold decisions." "To new beginnings," Nima said, clinking her glass with his. Later, when most of the guests had dispersed and those remaining had formed small groups absorbed in conversation, Nima went out onto the small interior patio that had been created as part of the expansion. The Tucson night was quiet and warm. The stars seemed especially bright. She thought about the journey she had taken this year, from a woman trapped in a toxic relationship to an independent entrepreneur who had created something unique and valuable. There had been pain and disappointment, betrayal and anger, but also discovery, growth, and new opportunities. A year ago, she couldn't have imagined feeling so calm and confident, being surrounded by support and understanding, having her business thrive and her heart slowly opening to new relationships. Life went on, and many chapters remained to be written. Nima took a deep breath of the night air and smiled at her thoughts. Her father had been right. She was much stronger than she thought. And now that strength was becoming her support in the new, free life she was creating day by day. Did you like the story, and which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect,